This is Center Stage, putting your firm in the spotlight by highlighting business owners and other industry experts to help take your firm to the next level. Hey everyone, and welcome to Center Stage. I'm your host, John Henson, and we are starting 2023, another season. Thank you so much for continuing to listen and be a part of it. And to start the year off, we're going to talk about something that you might end up facing in your life as a firm owner, and that is merging with another law firm. Or maybe if you're in the financial world, maybe you're merging, CPA or financial advisor firms, whatever the case may be. My guest this week, attorney Hailey Hawkins, has been through it. She started out as a smaller firm, got approached by a larger firm, went through that merger process, and I'll kind of let her dive into that story altogether. So, Hailey, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So, yeah, so I mean, let's just kind of get into it. Talk about, kind of where you began with your original firm and what kind of led up to getting approached by another firm to merge together.
Absolutely. So back in 2017, I believe it was now, my law partner, Stefan Hedgedus, and I had a very small firm. It was just the two of us and one assistant at that time. We ended up in a building with an attorney, Jim Stansel, who ultimately was like, hey, I'm going to retire. Would you guys like to take over my practice? So in 2018, we spent that whole year kind of taking over his practice, building it into something a little bit larger, acquired another attorney, and we were then essentially a 4-person firm. Yeah. In 2020, COVID hit, and we are a younger firm as a result of age, but also technologically, we were able to survive COVID pretty well because within 3 days of them making all the initial announcements about closing everything, including the courts, we were able to go completely remote. We had everything technologically set up so that all of our staff could work from home, and we were not as impacted by COVID as some of the other law firms, particularly some of the other law firms that were older or more reliant on actual servers in buildings, physical computers that could not leave the space. So the firm, Stott, Hollowell, Palmer, and Wyndham, went through some struggles. They had attorneys that did not know how to advance into the new technological world and wanted to basically look at an option that would allow them to continue to survive in this world. They had some personnel changes on their end. And at the end of the year, one of their attorneys had approached Jim Stansel, and who at that point had officially retired. He was just, COVID was done. He was done with that. Right. And he was just like, they did a great job of helping me retire and allowing me to kind of step out of this. I think it would be a really nice opportunity for you to talk with them. So conversation started in December of 2020. Ironically, while I had COVID and was home. So we did everything via Zoom and ended up merging officially April 1st of 2021.
Awesome. So, I guess when the merger process began, and I know some of our audience, just as part of their practice, probably has helped other businesses deal with mergers and acquisitions before. But I mean, what was that like? How did things change, kind of during the merger process? Were you still able to take on clients? Like, I don't know, like as just someone who's never been a part of this, I'm just very curious as to like what it looked like from a day-to-day kind of standpoint.
Absolutely. So, we had another interesting development as we merged. One of our partners also passed away. So our situation was a little bit unique in the sense that we were dealing with all of the traditional merger acquisition paperwork, changing our name, changing our EIN, going through the legal process of officially becoming one firm. In
Yeah.
addition to the cases, and the caseload doesn't stop.
Right.
You still continue to take cases, you still need to continue to have cash coming in, you
Yeah.
need to continue to have business coming in. And particularly as your expenses explode in many ways, it's important that you have people who are constantly coming through the door so that you know that the business is also going to continue to survive
Yeah.
through this process. And then
Yeah.
we also, of course, had the attorney that passed away, and we had all of his cases that we then also needed to wind down at the same time. So it was kind of like putting out fires every single day for about
Right.
6 months.
Yeah. So, and you mentioned the partner that passed away, and I don't, mean to sound, morbid or, kind of uncaring in this sort of sense, but like when Mr. Stansel retired, you kind of went through that. You took over his case, had to wind down his cases. Did that kind of prepare you to help kind of navigate when that other partner passed away, or was it a completely different situation?
Unfortunately, it's a completely different situation. So this attorney had done everything by paper,
Oh,
absolutely everything by paper.
okay. Yeah.
I inherited paper files that were so thick I'd never seen anything like that. And we have everything on our computer. So trying to then figure out these cases, which are all in the middle of cases. So we
Mm.
don't know exactly what's happened before that, other than reading through these huge stacks of files. And of
Yeah.
course, clients are calling in at that time, and my own caseload. So having all of these different people calling us at once, um, basically starting over with a brand new team. So, one of the big things that I think I learned through the merger is the importance of culture
Mm.
and fit in general. We had an interesting situation where we were trying to merge an older generation,
Yeah.
age wise, but also technologically, with someone who, we put everything in the cloud and everything is a little bit more technologically forward thinking. And, there were actual typewriters here
Wow.
and uh, things that my staff, my young team had never even seen. That, those giant paper cutters and things
Yeah.
to dictate its orders. So it was a
Right.
very interesting blend of cultures as well.
Yeah. So, obviously, you talked about tech, you talked about culture. What is there anything else, that a firm owner you think should keep in mind as they kind of enter into this process? Was there something that maybe caught you by surprise that you just didn't even expect going through this?
Um, I thought we had prepared as much as possible for a lot of the legal backings. We do not practice mergers and acquisitions, so we did consult with an actual mergers and acquisitions attorney. I strongly recommend doing that.
Mm.
Merging 401ks was probably one of the most complicated parts. We actually had to involve an ERISA attorney as well, and merging 401ks and different benefits, merging payrolls. We had to do quite a bit in terms of taxes because we needed to do a short year tax return on the one. We needed to then change the affiliation, change the legal name. So there was a lot
Mm.
going on behind the scenes legally just
Yeah.
to have this actually take place. And a lot of those things didn't even get finalized technically into this year, in terms
Wow.
of taxes, because the
Yeah.
2021 tax year was
Yeah.
finalized this year. So there was a lot behind the scenes that was also happening. I think the thing that probably caught me off guard the most, though, is actually the culture, because
Mm.
there's subtle things that we did as a firm that were very different than the firm that we merged with. And although personalities went well together and we all got along very well. There was no animosity, particularly between the partners in the beginning. I think the subtle things that you don't realize about how a firm functions start
Yeah.
coming out as you work together more often. And people just have different styles of working together. And things where
Yeah.
you're just like, oh, why would you do that? That's not
Yeah.
how we're used to doing things.
Yeah. And especially, in your situation, you talked about how it was kind of an older firm, for lack of a better term, kind of stuck in their ways, a little bit more traditional, and maybe slower to adopt some new tech. I mean, how do you, you know, was there any kind of like give and take there, in trying to encourage, maybe some of these newer partners to adopt some of this new technology? Like, how do you navigate some of those conversations?
Um, it is a process. I will say we had a lot of growing pains in the beginning, a lot of intense conversations about the different benefits of using technology and the downsides
Mhm.
of using technology, because as much as our firm and our generation tends to think that all technology is good, there were some areas where we also had to adapt and
Yeah.
recognize that this old way of doing something may not be the worst way to do it either. So it was a lot of compromise, a lot of working together. And frankly, it took a lot of time. I think, we merged in April of 21. We're now over a year and a half into this, and there's still things that we're working through. We're at a point where we are functioning well. We're not dealing with a lot of the merger acquisition type of situation anymore, but
Yeah.
I think it's always going to be a process to make sure that we're truly doing what's best for our clients and for our firm as a whole, as
Yeah.
opposed to just, I think it's natural to be stuck in your ways of saying, well, this way is how I've done it, so this is the best way to do it. And I think this merger has really helped all of us see, well, there's another way to do things and really figure out what is the best way to do something.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah. And, I mean, as with any business, I mean, like you're always going to be refining processes and working together and having those good conversations to just figure out the best way to do things. One other thing that I was actually curious about, you talked in the beginning how it was you and Stefan, would be considered a solo small firm, kind of in terms of like the law firm size hierarchy. After the merger, you're coming in with this other firm. They have several more partners. Now you combine, now it's, a handful of partners, handful of attorneys and all that, maybe closer to, if not at that mid-sized firm level. What kind of changes, did you notice in that regard, where now, you were in this solo small space, now you are part of a bigger firm? What kind of adjustments did you have to make there after basically kind of gaining a lot of new assets and resources?
It's really changed how we function in general, because it used to be a situation where if something needed to be done, I just would do it, or I would have Stefan do it, or one of us would just kind of take it on.
Mhm.
Now there is a lot more delegation, a lot more trust that someone else is going to do those things, and also a stronger need for better systems. It used to
Mhm.
be okay to just say, well, we'll just get it done, and if we do it this way this time and this way another time, that's okay. But when you
Mhm.
start having more people involved, absolutely everything requires a system and a process and guidelines on what is expected. So I think one of the biggest transitions, and we had some growing pains in the beginning,
Mhm.
because we do have different practice areas and money coming in different places, and making sure that the trust accounting is being done properly, and that anyone who has an opportunity to touch money is doing so in the exact same way, making sure that clients are being communicated with in a way that is consistent, so that we don't have anyone falling through the cracks or risk not having that customer service that we provided as a very small firm and was easy to provide as a small firm. As you
Mhm.
grow, I think that becomes a little bit more challenging,
Mhm.
just because the demands are different.
Right. So I want to ask you this as kind of a way to set up, one of my last questions. You've gone through this process. Um, at the end of the day, you look back on it. Was it worth it? Do you feel like you're in a better place? Or is it, kind of just like just it's just so different that it's just a completely different set of challenges? Or would you do it all over again if you had the chance?
That's an interesting question. I would say that I would do it all over again. I think it has its own set of challenges, to say the
Mhm.
least. I don't think I realized how long it would necessarily take to get to a really good spot where I'm just like, yes, this was all well worth it. I
Mhm.
think in many ways it was worth it for the intangible benefits that we have gained. I think the tangible benefits will probably come in the future still. I think there's
Yeah.
still a lot of work that needs to be done. Um, but we're making good progress, and I'm very excited about what the future holds for us as a firm. We are in a very small town,
Mhm.
Gaston, North Carolina, and this merger has allowed us to become one of the largest, if not the largest firm in the county.
Yeah.
So the amount of influence that gives us, but also the opportunities that that provides, is unimaginable prior to this situation. So I think this has allowed us to really propel ourselves forward in a way that I didn't think was possible,
Mhm.
um, not without its own set of challenges. And I think
Yeah.
I would do it all over again. If you would have asked me this last year, I probably would not have given that same response. And I think as time passes, it's going to continue to get better.
Yeah.
But I'm also a year and a half removed now, so it's not quite as, you know, in it
Right.
as we
Right. Yeah. No, I get that. And don't sell yourself short. I mean, Gastonia, just outside of Charlotte, for people who aren't familiar with the area, I mean, probably still, 80,000 people, if not more, especially as more people are kind of moving out to the suburbs. So, not a very small town by any standards. I mean, still a very good sized town. And so, to be one of, if not the biggest firms in that county, adjacent to Charlotte, still a very big accomplishment. And so, but I did ask that question to set up this final question that I had for you. You know, uh, Obviously you talk about, it was worth it. It's still a big process. I mean, like buying a house, but like way on steroids, so many different things you got, to keep track of and go through, and a lot of people to deal with, and all of that. But in the end, still ends up putting you in a better place. So for anyone out there who might be looking to grow their firm this way, try to maybe merge with another firm, what kind of tips do you have for people to maybe make their firm more attractive, to maybe get someone's attention for a potential merger?
I think that's a great question. I think one of the best things that you can do is make sure that you're providing the type of service that you would want to be able to highlight something that
Mhm.
you can show is of value. I think one of the things that kind of helped set us apart was not only that we helped Jim Stansel retire, but we did so in a way that allowed him to keep his good reputation, his name. Um, it left a really positive taste in his mouth, which allowed
Mhm.
him to speak positively about it. And I think that a lot of the partners that we've merged with here would have similar comments of a good part of it is being a hard worker, making sure that you're providing good representation, being a good lawyer, being an ethical lawyer,
Yeah.
but also running a business that is sustainable and doesn't look like you're constantly just putting out fires and stressed all the time. I think that helps too, to
Yeah.
make someone feel confident that you can actually take this on and help them, as opposed to add to their level of stress.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, you talked, you mentioned things along the way, being able to have good systems in place, being able to have the technology in place to help you be flexible, whether it's another pandemic that comes up or even just running more efficiently. And so being able to do things like that, may seem small upfront, but it can lead to bigger things down the road. The one final question that I do have for you before we wrap up here, is that if you had one final piece of advice for our audience out there, could be about a merger, could be about anything, that you want to share, what would it be?
Definitely ask for help. I think one of the things that lawyers tend to do is think that we have the answers to everything and think that we can just do it ourselves and research it ourselves. And I know for a fact that I would not have been able to make it through this past year and a half without getting advice from people who are much more educated and intelligent in certain areas than I am. Employing a mergers and acquisition attorney, employing an ERISA attorney when necessary, getting a business coach, having Spotlight Branding doing all of our marketing, making sure that we were working with people who really knew what they were doing, who could help guide us along the way instead of trying to do it all ourselves. I think there's a lot of power in surrounding yourself with really good resources and people that can guide you the way that you're supposed to be thinking about things and force you to think about it in a different way.
Awesome. Love it. And yeah, I mean, I completely agree with all of that. So Hailey, this has been really great. I've learned some things along the way. I know that's been valuable for our audience. So I really do appreciate you coming on. And that's going to do it for us this week. Continue to rate and review wherever you're consuming the show. Appreciate all the feedback that we've been getting as well. And that's going to do it. We'll see you next week. Hailey, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening. To learn more, go to spotlightbranding.com/center stage.